Outside the Circles of Time by Kenneth Grant. Chapter 18, The Incoming Current. In the now obsolete Golden Dawn system of attainment which pertained to the Aeon of Osiris, the power zone Tifereth was the place of meeting between man and his angel, and through his angel with the bright gods of the day side of the Tree of Life. On the night side, however, which is the dark mirror wherein the future aeons cast their spectral vectors of force, Tifereth is the place of the black sun, which casts into the outer universe the essences or rays, kalas, of the black flame that burns behind the sun. It is, of course, absolutely essential that the dayside union with the angel should have occurred before the nightside nuptials are essayed. For the dark entity that is born of that congress is the daughter of Tetragrammaton, and the gateway to the dimensionless voids beyond Yugoth. By merging Mot and Horus into the double current, one can create a vortex with an extended lease. This not only ensures the duration of the vortex well into the Aeon of Mot, but also adds the increased intensity of supplemental power from the future. The vortices created now by the double current are being used and maintained by the Matian priesthoods downwind in the time stream. These even include the power places on present coastlines that will be submerged in the Aeon of Mot by seismic activity and other geological forces. Owing to humanity's exclusive traffic with dayside phenomena, and the use of the front of the tree by initiates of the Aeon of Osiris and Isis, a lopsided situation has arisen, which may be corrected only by a systematic invocation of the Cleaveth, or by the night-side equivalents of the power zones, cosmic and mundane. This is the reason for so much attention being directed by initiates today to the subconsciousness in the human being, and to extra-dimensional consciousness in the planetary and cosmic organism. The invocation of the Cleaveth is therefore incumbent upon those who, after having aligned themselves in consciousness with the vectors of ongoing force emanating from their angel, attempt to leap through the vortices, the black holes, and emerge in the Mot Aeon fully enlightened or awakened. The awakening process is likely to be violent, somewhat destructive, certainly purgative. Demons will scurry from every facet of the self. Ethics demand that silence and the magical circle be strictly employed by magicians during personal invocation of the Forgotten Ones, so that none may encounter his demons except himself. In the same paper, Andahadna warns the magician that to employ ninth-degree workings as the source of the manifestation substance for the invoked Forgotten Ones is exceedingly dangerous and potentially harmful, unless both partners are of equal mastery and the working is undertaken as a dual invocation. To engage in the work with an uninitiate or one of lesser grade would be exposing him or her to forces beyond his comprehension or control. Generally speaking, it were wiser to operate 8th degree, invoking Mot during the initial phase and imbuing the elixir with her essence of balance and truth. In a magical writing dictated by Na'atan, Andahadna explains that the magician can call upon the existence of a certain astral allies who are working with the double current. They can help in many ways, but care has to be taken to identify them before entering into compact with them. Their spectrum of operational fields begins in the sphere of foundation, Yesod, and extends its natural expanse into a trans-kether of its own universe. Their tree is thus shifted up a plane, and although there are congruencies in the upper spheres, our astral allies can only interact effectively with us in Yesod, which is their Malkuth. Further on, in the same writing is given a simple method of field analysis to determine the nature of an astral entity. The procedure is to radiate the essence of the sun of the hawk and the negative radiance of the black flame. The allies will match the radiance in tonal or harmonic frequencies. Alien entities will flee or be rendered immobile. The radiance may be engendered by visualizing a sun sphere bearing the eye of Horus and a black flame speckled with stars. Vibrate the mantram Lutis Nitra, and your astral body will emit the envisioned radiance. The gematria of the mantram is 359, which is half of 718, and the number of Shaitan, as the Ophidian complement of the double current Set Ma'at. It is also the number of Shtim, the sacred wind, upon which the allies ride. The Typhonian wind that is represented by the seventh head of the beast, called by the Sumerians the angel of the fatal wind. This is the breath of fire hissing to come forth and turn back, seeing by night and bringing by day. The allies are discreted elements of the magician's psyche. At the psychological level, they may be compared with the cast-off orgasm reflexes of Reichian psychology. The allies are astral embodiments of the most powerful atavisms in nature, and their resurgence is accompanied with great danger to the magician who is not properly in rapport with his angel. By finding them and using their power, consciousness is propelled in a quantum leap to the level of a native in the beginning of the Aeon of Ma'at. This is not an entirely safe method. In what is possible to identify the consciousness of the magician with the survival lusts of our ancestral selves and become trapped in pre-human consciousness. While it is relatively safe to invoke them on the astral planes in strictly controlled physical workings, one should not employ their energies beyond these spheres. Although the Forgotten Ones are akin to man, having assisted in his evolution from marine to mundane existence, they are no longer on the direct line of man's evolution, and the magician is warned against forming any alliance with them over and beyond the limits of the immediate work for which he enlists their aid. The reason for this warning is that, for a certain span of our unrecorded history, our survival force was controlled and employed by entities from beyond our universe known as the Elder Gods. These beings attempted to extend their sphere of influence beyond their own environs, and they selected pre-man as a potential instrument for their purpose. Alien beyond human imagining, they cannot be construed as evil. Their main purpose is to devour, and since their structure is incompatible with our universe's physics, they can but eat by means of the life forms native to our universe. Their attempted employment of the proto-race constituted a conflict with the development of man's autonomy. They were therefore escorted back to their own realm, and the gateway was sealed. Since the Manhattan Project, however, the seal was dissolved. These alien entities are presently preparing for another attempt on our universe. They have not forgotten the keys to the Forgotten Ones. Indeed, they have periodically managed an occasional breach in the fabric of space-time before the gateway reopened. The Elder Gods exist outside our tree, and the gateway is in the non-sphere of Daath. There is a type of hidden connection between Yesod and Daath, and therefore there exists some danger of an Elder God, Forgotten One tie being reactivated. Ma'atian Gestalt consciousness is able to prevent such tie reactivation, but the degree of such consciousness available via the Forgotten Ones working alone is not sufficient to reseal the gateway. It might be helpful at this point to summarize the information supplied by Andahadna concerning the production of Liber Pene Praenumbra and the incoming tide in the Aeon of Ma'at. The mass of Ma'at, see Chapter 12, was directed towards attaining rapport with the energies of the future Aeon. The working was successful, and Liber Pene Praenumbra was one of its tangible results. It is, like its predecessor, the Book of the Law, a thing quite beyond the sphere of the mind. Past and future are now, and the most distant point in the cosmos is simply here. Both Sor and Ahadna and the Shadow have been assured of a continuation of the guidance they receive from Ma'atian entities via the Mass of Ma'at for the remainder of their current incarnations. Frater Lugus Thor was the adept who perceived with Endahadna the subtle presence of a Magus from the Aeon of Ma'at. It has already been shown that this Magus is identical with the entity Lam, the concentration of Malat and Talam, who appeared to Aleister Crowley during a working in Greenwich Village around 1918. The Magus directed the writing of Liber Pene Praenumbra. He also directed Sor and Ahadna to send a copy of the Liber to the present author in his capacity as Frater Eosic Iwas, the outer head of the Ordo Templi Orientis. The present book is, in part, a result of Endahadna's action. It forms the first published message of radiation of the double current of Horus Ma'at, 93-696. Although some information has already been released in Night Side of Eden. According to Endahadna, the tarot trump that seems to be most pertinent to the Ma'at energies is Atu 8, adjustment. This formula, ascribed to Saturn and Venus, is linked to the Sun in a manner that is comprehensible only with reference to the Night Side tarot which underlies it. The guardian of the tunnel underlying the 22nd path to which Atu 8 is described is Lafkersiax, whose number is 671, the number of Adonai, the Lord, i.e. the Sun, Tifereth. Beneath the path, Adonai becomes Idonius, a form of Had, Hades, Lord of Hell. Adonius is therefore a form of the Plutonian current that rules the abyss. The magical power attributed to the adept who can use this current is ability to balance upon the treacherous and funambulatory way that leads from the negative to the positive in the realm of creative chaos. It enables the magician to spin a web across the gulf of the abyss. The zootype of this formula is the spider. The orthodox attribution of Path 22 associates it with Ma'at, and it is easy to recognize in the tunnel that underlies it a distortion of Ma'at symbols. The balance, Libra, the feather, wing or genitalia, and sword, emblem of the Scarlet Woman. In the sigil of Lafkersiax, the cross of equilibrium is awry and the scales upset. The ruler of the balance has been put down as the Lord of the Abyss opens the gate of the Dark Goddess and brings forth fantastic beings that haunt this tunnel in the form of ravenous birds with the faces of women who snatch away the souls of the living from their mortal clay. But these considerations are limited in their meaning and application. We should recall Crowley's words in the Book of Thoth, from page 86. In the greatest symbolism of all, the symbolism beyond all planetary and zodiacal considerations, this card, Atu 8, is the feminine complement of the Fool. For the letters Aleph Lamed constitute the secret key of the Book of the Law, and this is the basis of a complete Kabbalistic system of greater depth and sublimity than any other. The details of this system have not yet been revealed. The reference is to the Aeon of Ma'at, which, pertaining as it does to the perfection or ultimation of the Aeon of Horus, lay beyond Crowley's work. It was Frater Akkad who assumed the work of revelation, but he left it unfinished. Since Endahadna's receipt of Liber Pene Praenumbra, however, the work has again progressed. Crowley correctly assessed the nature of the woman goddess Ma'at when he described her, Thoth, page 87, as the ultimate illusion, which is manifestation, the dance, many-colored, many-wild, of life itself. If the word manifestation is considered in the light of the previous remarks on this subject, it will become apparent that Akkad has correctly defined the word of Ma-Eon, i.e. of Ma'at. The nature of Venus is the essence of womanhood, and the nature of Saturn is the essence of time, which is the manifestation through woman of the eternal illusion of being and becoming, of moving and going. Saturn is therefore the lord of the kalas of the many-colored dance. Atu 8 thus resumes the formula of Set, or the beast, and the scarlet woman, as identical with the magical formula of the 9th degree of the OTO, the formula of love under will. Immediately after the reception of Liber Pene Praenumbra, Sor Anahadna became the vehicle of the entity whose portrait she painted while in a state of semi-trance, in which she also produced similar writings. Like Crowley, Andahadna is emphatic in her denial that these writings were in any sense automatic. They proceeded from a discrete entity having a personality and an individual identity distinct from her own. At various stages of her work, she alludes to her three geometrical friends, Rosarion, Rotat, and Navhem. Some of the regulars that work through me are our lodge angel, Terikon, and Adina medicine chief named Bearclaw. A priest of Saturn I know only as the dream master of Terion, and my three geometrical friends. Rosarion is a crimson sphere of light, Rotat a Kabbalistic cross of salmon pink and light blue, and Navhem is a dark blue 5-pointed star. There are also darker geometrical friends, such as those seen by Spare in a curious form of trance, dreaded by practitioners of dream control, when the dream disintegrates and breaks away from control, carrying the dreamer into terrifying alien dimensions where circles speak and angles sharpen into dizzy spires, from the finials of which the dreamer dives in a black ecstasy of creative vertigo. Much of Spare's work was accomplished after waking from such trances. Andahadna's geometrical friends waited for her on one occasion in the Temple of Babylon, on the upper astral levels of consciousness, at a place she calls the Desert of the Stars, and which she describes as a convenient central location with multiple access to many useful places. It was from regions such as these that Liber Pene Praenumbra and other writings emanated. Andahadna relates that on January 14, 1975, quote, "As I began an entry into my diary, Liber Pene Praenumbra began writing itself non-stop. I later typed several copies, giving one to Frater Nemo and one to Frater Ariel. They both advised me to keep the matter quiet until the current should provide a suitable occasion to release it. When Alan Holub mailed me his bundle of correspondences to be placed in the archives, I obtained your address. I hadn't intended to disturb you with any communication, but an unquestionable directive came." Andahadna's communication, i.e. Liber PP, disclosed notable similarities between her work and the abandoned Amalantra working, which ended, it will be remembered, with a cryptic reference to an egg. Frater Akkad, who was present with Crowley and others at various stages at the Amalantra working, continued where Crowley left off. I have been shown in Cults of the Shadow the stages the work reached under Akkad's direction, but the conclusive fact that Andahadna had taken up the thread became apparent only after my discovery that the word ipsos, which is declared in Liber Pene Praenumbra, to be the word of the Aeon of Ma'at, is Kabbalistically identical with RPSTOVAL, a secret cipher contained in AL. One number of these two words is 456, another is 696. During correspondence with Andahadna, and without informing her of the special significance of either of these numbers, I asked her to analyze them. In answer to my query, she wrote, quote, "The numbers you provide have no meaning to my conscious mind, since it is unlearned, as I have said in the science of gematria. However, the numbers are living beings and serve as keys to meaning for me by some intuitive process I cannot describe. 456 evokes the image of the two towers of Heru and Ma'at. There is an endless desert reaching far, no sun in view, yet light suffuses all the sky. Beneath the sand lies buried a vast form in hibernative sleep, ready to awaken at a call. The priest who is to waken it approaches. He stands midway between the towers and lifts a ram's horn's trumpet to his mouth. By the same mouth that sounds the waking note of a Roomba is the blood of nations drunk as a sacrament. 696 is the inner synthesis of the mass of Ma'at. It is the process by which the Gestalt is born. It is a breakthrough, a sideways path that shortcuts nature's evolution program. It is the will to nothingness, the self-annihilation sacrifice that must be done before the vessel is pure. It empties out and purges by black fire, Kefra and Maut, the trump card the moon. It is a cycle, touching earth, then again ascending. The massed force of the watchers hover near, awaiting the next phase of the work to begin. It awaits the word of will in this new aspect. The egg within the egg must break its shell. Heru Parkroth must speak, and Tahuti assume silence. We hover on the wings of time and wait. All men are of Omni. If they but knew, Omni's task is to eat the souls of men, incorporating them within the Gestalt, with full consent of the individual will. Andahadna enclosed a talisman in her letter, with the observation, quote, "The talisman will aid you as a key to Liber Pene Praenumbra. It is also a key to the Dream Master's presence. If used according to instructions, he will manifest to you according to your individual means of perception." Unquote. Consider the words italicized and the remarks concerning RPSTOVAL, which contains the egg within the egg that appeared to Crowley in the Amalantra working. Consider also that Andahadna was unaware of the special significance of the numbers she was asked to analyze, and of the fact that RPSTOVAL and Ipsos are Kabbalistically identical, and it will surely be accounted as proof that her work continues that of Therion, Crowley, and Akkad via Eosic. Note, also, the reference to the vast form buried beneath the sand, which recalls the desert and the palm tree of the Amalantra working. The desert is the domain of Set, whose name, St, appears with the egg, OVAL, in the word RPSTOVAL, as does AL, the Book of the Law, and RP, the number of which is 280. This is the number of Ipsos, and of the squares on the side of the vault of the Adepts, wherein lies buried the vast form. 280 is also the number of KMNPTZ, justice or adjustment, Ma'at. The egg is the feminine repository of life. Its vital kalas are absorbed by the mouth of the priest with the ram's horn that awakens the form buried beneath the desert. Another factor that gained special significance some time after Andahadna had established contact with the OTO is that of the number of her magical name. This was first communicated to her by the transmitting intelligence as 71. In a letter explaining her magical name, she wrote, quote, "The name is Andahadna, its number 124. 71 was originally given, and forcibly so, but its significance has yet to be encountered. It came with Nahada, whose enumeration is 62, so 71 was shelved until further data be acquired. Adahan drifted in as the mirror shadow of Nahada, and as such took the same numeration of 62. The twins combined as Andahadna, 124, then contracted by dropping the superfluous letters to Andahadna, to Andadna, Andadana, but it kept the numeration of the expanded form." Unquote. 71, as shown elsewhere, is the number of Lamb, the intelligence with whom Crowley was in contact while in America. It is highly probable that this intelligence dominated the Amalantra working which Crowley performed with Akkad and others around 1915. The face of this entity is egg-shaped, and Ahadna, unaware of this, took up the symbolism of the egg in her designation of the Talam and Malat, and their relation to the white and red egg of the massive Mat. The number 71 is also the number of the Latin word vagina, the nest and the gate of birth, and of Allele, the image of nothingness and silence, which is a fulfillment of the aspiration. The aspiration is symbolized by the aspirate He, the female, in this case, the daughter of the Tetragrammaton formula. 71 is also the number of the dove, the primal Typhonian bird symbolic of the vagina. The word of the dove is Hriliu. It is the creative word vibrated in silence, in the shrill scream of orgasm. 62, another number associated with Andahadna, is the number Nav, the ark, the womb, or navel. The vagina is the ark of the egg, and, in another sense, the cosmic space capsule, the vessel of the void that conveys the word to man from the voice of the silence. The silence here implied is that which Crowley stigmatized as a number of sin, restriction, the wrong kind of silence, that of the Black Brothers. But this is a typically Solarite interpretation of the mysteries of the moon goddess Sin and of GVP 89. The closing of the womb and the destruction of the egg by the waters. The Atlantean designation of the lunar current was the word Zin. One of its numbers, 67, is that of the word Zain, which is associated with the nameless aeon, at which Crowley hinted with trepidation, see chapter 6. Another of its numbers is 717, which is one less than a phrase meaning into desolation through the unspeakable, which is also suggestive of the wordless aeon. 717 is also a form of Eosic, the name of a great old one whose connection with that aeon is not yet fully understood. All these ideas are related to the concept of silence. Note that DM means blood, and DMMH 89 means silence, thus showing unequivocally the primal identity of blood and silence, and of the voice or Vak of the silence. The Vak from whose outtrance issues the blood of manifestation. Rosarian, the crimson light, gave Andahadna a glimpse of various post-human evolutionary choices. One such choice is to become a star in the HPK universe, taking our universe as a photographic negative. She experienced existence as such a star, knowing that she had a twin existing here. From this, she deduces that the nature of Ma'at is analogous to that of a neutron star. Quote, when stars have acquired enough evolutionary experience in their stellar form, they must die. Hence supernova or neutron star singularity. The neutron star state is a necessary step in their going through. It is a condition, a way of being for the star to transcend itself. And such is Ma'at. She is a doorway, but any who would pass must first become her. Unquote. In the same communication, Andahadna amplifies the analogy with the neutron star. Quote, as a neutron star retains and even absorbs light, it might be said that it radiates darkness. So does the black flame. Ma'at is a shadow and a twin to Nuit. She is also the relationship between her sister and herself. Unquote. Ma'at is also, as we have seen, the daughter aspect of the formula of the Tetragrammaton, but in a manner not envisaged by the ancient Kabbalists. In answer to the inevitable question as to how Ma'at can function before her aeon is supposed to have dawned, Andahadna replies, quote, by helping to keep the balance in a time of martial energies, of tremendous change. There are so many stuck and defeated people, slaves, who could achieve great evolutionary strides were they to have a proper sense of balance. Unquote. This is a warning against confusing the planes, or at least the symbols of one plane of those of another, a defect against which Crowley never tired of warning aspirants. This defect has unseated more would-be magicians than any baleful influence from outside. To the question as to whether Ma'at assists the balance by relieving the burdens of suffering souls, Andahadna replies, quote, hardly. She twins the pressure within their HPK universe, or shadow side, making it impossible to bear. Then the egg cracks, and there elsewhere. No one can experience this against his will. Success in this invocation is marked by cracking the egg, and the realization that one has always been Ma'at, or Tao, or Brahman, or Nothing, etc. Names don't really apply. The practical value of Ma'at is that once one realizes that one is balanced ongoingness, then one is free to become a totally protean channel for the mirror force that allows others to perceive their true self. Using Ma'at's word of power, Ipsos, as a mantram, invariably brings the black flame into perception. Internally, she manifests as a tangible roar, coupled with an almost irresistible impulse to shoot up out of the body, through the top of the head. Externally, the manifestations vary. Once, the sofa I was sitting on vibrated itself about halfway across the room, and on another occasion my daughter said my aura turned a brilliant white and looked like a fountain. Unquote. Andahadna had no intention of publishing the Book of the Forgotten Ones, even after the second part had been received. On the contrary, she almost succumbed to an impulse to rip it to shreds. Furthermore, she made no attempt to analyze the words of power because of a reluctance to play with the names in any way at all. She knew that, like the Abramelin squares, which Crowley warned against handling idly, the names have a dynamic life of their own that is all too easily awakened. On one occasion, while working with Holub in the subterranean temple of No, she saw the owner of one of the names. She saw, quote, No emerge from his topaz-colored cocoon of light and settle around my skull like a helmet, sinking his fangs into my brain. I was even idiot enough to invoke him in a ritual with the shadow and Nomade, and then watched him stalk the two of them around the circle. In my body, drawn knife, flesh hunger, intent on butchery and all. They, the forgotten ones, are real enough." Unquote. Holub, on the other hand, plays quite fearlessly with these names, and so far with impunity. He has a particular leaning towards the great old ones, and according to Andahadna, his work with them is highly effectual. It was during a joint working that Holub had the vision of the Golden One, the feminine analog of Naatan. Holub is thus an efficient channel of the double current in its Matian form. Naatan has stated in a communication received by Andahadna that, quote, "all pertinent data is presently available to us, and that the translation of it in terms intelligible to the present state of initiated consciousness is a vital exercise that will affect the establishment of the Ma'at consciousness in A, the translators, B, the ripe and ready readership audience, and C, the planetary aura." She adds ominously, "if the race is not awakened, it will blast itself into radioactive slag. If it does wake up, it has to be in absolute sanity of balance and truth. Ma'at, in short." She also warns that it is not simply a matter of globally unleashing the forgotten ones in the day side, i.e. on the hither side of the tree of life. This would almost certainly result in massive panic. Man must achieve the mutational leap on the night side. It is the task of initiates to draw out the consciousness of humanity, much as the ancient Egyptians drew out the skull of the brain of the deceased, a delicate operation that is possible only if the ego is quite dead. A similar note of caution was sounded by Crowley when speaking about the work of the comment on AL. He realized that if it were not executed exactly according to the instructions given in the book itself, years, even centuries of devastating havoc might blast the planet in lieu of a spiritual enlightenment for which it is the purpose of AL to provide mankind. The children of Ma'at are the elemental and instrumental factors in the initiation of humanity at the present stage of its development. They will provide the initiations via the ordeals that will accelerate evolution by means of a mutational leap. In connection with this event, it is significant that the image of the frog appeared to Andahadna about the same time Liber Pene Praenumbra was being transmitted. She then had a vision of the 23rd trump of the tarot. She supposed that this trump to be outside of the tree of life, reckoning the 22nd path to be the last. Atu 23 included the image of a frog among its symbols. As previously explained, the frog is the symbol of those adepts who use the formula of the Voltigeurs, which involves a method of transcending the paths on the night side of the tree. When this formula was pointed out to Andahadna, she had a fleeting but vivid vision, quote, of a dark amphibious form, limbed in phosphorescent green, holding a wand. The wand was clearly visible, emitting its own light, a trident in the form of Shin. What a fire spirit symbol like Shin was doing in such surroundings, I have no idea. He, i.e. the amphibious form, reminded me about the 23rd trump, which contained the images of a ballerina, a winged eye, a clown, and a frog. The number 23 is of special importance in the Aeon of Horus Ma'at. But here we are concerned with the image of the frog as the symbol of leaping from one aeon to another on the funambulatory pathway, of which the ballerina and the clown are symbols. The winged eye, on the other hand, is the symbol of Yanu, the formula, according to Holub, for grounding forces of all times into the present aeon. The symbolism of the frog, is a little more complex than at first it appears. The following jottings from Andahadna's magical record are illuminating. Quote, frog, Cthulhu's totem, tadpoles like spermatozoa grown large, marvelous mouth, with the tongue anchored in backwards, attached at lower jaw and lying in a groove toward the back of the throat. When prey comes along, it flicks forward like a spear-throwing stick, lightning quick, snaring the helpless fly with its adhesive and slightly bifurcate tip. The frog represents Mercury Sagittarius, as well as the elder gods. Frog eggs are laid in a frothy, glutinous mass. The functions of the mouth and the tongue are stressed. The name of the frog is Hect, from which Egyptian original, the Greek Hecate, is derived. The frog-headed goddess is one of the major totems of the Draconian cult. It is not only the symbol of transformation from watery astral existence to earth or flesh, it is also the symbol of the leapers who jump the paths on the reverse side of the tree of life. But, most important of all, Hecate is the equivalent of the number 100, Kof, the glyph of sexual magic in its lunar phase, and of Kaf, the daughter who reifies by means of the secret eye of her sexual moon. The frog goddess is thus a glyph of Kofnia, the eye of manifestation of the backward paths, and as such an embodiment of the Ma Eon, or of the Aeon of Maat, adumbrated in the Book of the Law. It is noteworthy in this connection that a certain magical word recently published in a book purporting to issue from alien sources proves at least the genuineness of those sources, if not the validity of the particular interpretation of the message proceeding from them. The word is Orisor, and it is defined as soul substance. Its number is 542 VRISSVR, which is Kabbalistically identical with the MQBTH, the foramen or small hole in the heart, which is identical with the void, Sunyata, that is the base and substance of all things. 442 is also MSHBR, the os matricis ruptura uteri, the mouth or matrix or mother, the breaking or opening of the womb. It is thus a number of Ma'at, and the daughter of Ma'at, and of the process of breaking open, represented by the horn of the beast as it accomplishes the great work. This process is demonstrated geometrically by the sum of the initials of the two great orders, the AA and the OTO, which typify the great actives and passives, the beasts and the mother, for OTO plus AA also equals 542. Furthermore, when the beast 666 and the great work 418 are in the phase of direct functioning, their number becomes 1084, which is twice times 542. Thus, the OTO and the AA generate the soul substance known as Orisor, which power informs the double current of Horus and Maat. Here we have another demonstration of the identity of man's origins in space. According to the few descriptions given in Phillips's book, Orisor is a being of another order, another world, a great old one like Aiwas, Amalantra, Aosic, Abuldiz, and others. Note the similarity of the word Orisor to the African word Orisha or Oricha, which means fetish, oracle, or divine word. Pharaoh refers to good and bad Orishas, and others who cannot be traced back to any human origin. According to Pharaoh, under the term Orisha are included many gods, stated by the priests generally to be 401 in number, unquote. 401 was the original estimate, later accretions bringing the total up to 600 if not more. The number 401 is that of ATH, essence, A precise definition of Orisor and a synonym for Azoth, the sum and essence of all conceived as one. 400 is the number of full manifestation. 401 is the manifestation of all in unity. It is one less than Oakbish, spider, the supreme totem of one of the earliest cults known to man. Ath, essence, also means out of, from the Egyptian ut, the uterus or outtrance of soul into manifestation. One of the numbers of Orisha is 581, which is that of Pan and Horus by Latin gematria, and of Othiqa, the ancient one, again identifying the concept with Orisor. It is evident that concepts pertaining to the Orishas are relevant also to Orisor, and a Kabbalistic analysis of the two words helps us to understand the power behind them. The book by Phillips is of particular interest here because it refers to the secretions and excretions that are used in sexual magic involving invocations of the Great Old Ones or of the Forgotten Ones. Whether Orisor pertains to the former or to the latter class makes very little difference. The book advocates the use of elixirs and draws attention to them as invaluable means, possibly the only means whereby man may avert the catastrophes attendant upon the abuse and misuse, because through sheer ignorance they have been allowed to go to waste. In ancient Egypt, these vital kalas or elixirs were represented by the beetle, which was the symbol of the light and darkness, the sun at midnight. The beetle Kefra was also emblematic of the coprophagous deity, the eater of dung in the day of Be With Us. In the Aeon of Mat, the representative of this type is the bee that hides its sweetness in darkness, for this insect fabricates its honeycomb out of its own excreta. The light is the male moon, the sweetness is the female moon. Together they form the honeymoon that is the glyph of the Kalas of Mat, mother, and the daughter, or Ma'yan. Hence the emphasis on the bee in Andahadna's writings. She describes the comity of stars as an intergalactic brotherhood and observes that it is, quote, engaged in bringing to planetary unity various sentient races within its sphere of influence, and performing the equivalent function with those life forms which manifest neither race nor planet. Man, as a unified planetary person, is vital to the becoming of this supergestalt. As a seed, man is not really native to Earth. He was planted by the comedy long ago by means of DNA manipulation into the racial stock of the then dominant primate species, thus tasting of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. But there was a point of choice. A prototype anthropoid nuclear group was bred with the human consciousness and was given the option of production or sterility. The comedy has maintained a close watch ever since, intervening in our history by means of human agents, by myth and legend, by directing the racial unconscious on the astral plane, by focusing the increasingly subtle sequence of the magical current into the developing individual consciousness, and, at last, giving guidance to Na'atan so that he can complete the job of his own awakening." Unquote. Andahadna suggests, no doubt correctly, that, quote, one reason why the Forgotten Ones are so difficult to work with is that they derived from the parent stock of primates upon whose chromosomes we were impressed. Unquote. Andahadna has no hesitation in declaring that the seed of man was planted on this planet by an alien intelligence. I have suggested in previous writings that the teachings relevant to man's spiritual initiations issue from the AA, which I have identified with the star of Set, known astronomically as Sirius. It should be remembered, however, that Sirius is but a symbol and a focus of extra-cosmic influences. This fact of man's alien origins is concealed in the name Orisur, one number of which is 810, the number of semen, i.e. seed. It is also the number of LSHPTH, meaning ad labium, at the lip, and of the Greek Cyprus, a name of Venus, showing in this context the sexual nature of the lip, or mouth, and its double function, sucking, absorbing, and uttering the word. Similarly, the word Orisha, when valued at 650, contains reference to the LSHOIRM, or Daemonibus Hirsutus, the hairy, goatish deities worshipped in Egypt, sacred to Sirius. Arabian lore mentions these creatures and identifies them with a class of jinn. The author of The Undiscovered Country comments as follows, quote, "One is instantly reminded of the Highland Glaistig, half goat, half woman. The Flying Saucer Review has reports of entities of this kind." Unquote. The jinns were also covered in hair and affected animal shapes. These may be equated with the Almas, the haunter of the Gobi Desert, a version of whose name appears in the Invocation of the Great Old Ones in a story by H.P. Lovecraft. The invocation is based on a ritual preserved by Eliphas Levi, who renders the name Almusin. The number of Almas is 192, which is that of Zloph, or Simum, the poisonous wind associated with the desert of Set, thus connecting the formula with the Lshorm. Of particular interest is the formula of magical cannibalism described by Anna Hodna in a paper entitled Feast of the Hive, a rite at which Lovecraft hints in connection with the abominable plateau of Leng, which comports a magical formula involving necrophilia. This element, however, does not here apply. The feasting described by Andahadna is on living substances, the kalas themselves, the honey previously mentioned. This is the rite of the hive, the bee being the emblem of Maat in her Aeonic avatar. The endocrine system contains such concentration of kalas that, as Andahadna observes, adepts alone can sustain their ingestion with impunity. When successfully accomplished, the result is an accumulation of endocrine prana that will, at the appointed time, assist planetary man to make the leap to non-corporeal existence in concert with the rest of the comedy. The adepts of this rite feed on the genitals. The adepts of this rite, quote, feed on the genitals as well as on the adrenals, pancreas, thyroid, pituitary, and pineal glands. But this happens only when the adepts involved decide that it is time to discorporate, unquote. Whereas the rite of the beetle is coprophagous insofar as it involves menstrual and other kalas, the rite of the bee is so only in the sense that it is concerned with kalas beyond the sphere of the moon and outside the circles of time. However, one aspect of the necrophilia rite is emphatically Matian, in that it involves the imbibition of fragrances from the flowers of the dead, from the Suvasinis who exist in the cremation ground in the form of a honey bank, maintained in the void by magicians traveling to and from the various worlds and spaces beyond Kether, Yugoth. That these spaces are not merely imaginary locations, but actually inhabitable and inhabited regions, is maintained by Andahadna, who, alluding to the sylphs of Amproteus mentioned in The Night Side of Eden, has this experience to relate, quote, "I am in the habit of just hanging out in a void of sorts, whenever the rare chance to do so presents itself. A few years ago, I was a bit startled to observe that I wasn't alone in that no place.
There was not a bubble, but a semi-transparent brownish pod, complete with traces of veining and a stem. Observing a form moving inside it, I approached and saw a man, about in his early 40s, swarthy and with a carefully trimmed beard, and dressed in what seemed to be the garb of the Italian Renaissance. He was screaming and beating on the walls of the pod with his fists, but I could hear no sound. I had no idea how to free him, and a vague instinct warned me not to even make an attempt to do so. He seemed to perceive me and plead for release, but when I decided to heed the hunch not to interfere, his eyes unfocused, and I assume I disappeared for him. I put a pentagram of light around the pod at 90 degrees to its long axis, and let it drift off. I'd forgotten all about the poor fellow until I read the Amproteus chapter in Night Side of Eden." Unquote. These space zones are exclusive to the type of entity that normally haunt the tunnels of Set. There are a number of ways of gaining access to these tunnels, From the curious nervous cough described by George MacDonald in Lilith, to the elaborate dances devised by Andahadna for gaining entrance to the tunnels and the paths. She notes that the dizziness induced by the dances enables the magician to enjoy a dissociation of perception that may be akin to Austin Spare's formula of creative vertigo. Each individual magician should discover his own peculiar modes of access. These cannot be contrived artificially, for they are suggested directly from the subconscious by chance occurrences of nervous stimulation, which engender the atmosphere necessary for creative work in any sphere. Rimbaud's science of stimulation by the formula de règlement de tous les sens has already been discussed. Crowley and others attempted to induce the state artificially by means of drugs, alcohol, and/or night-side sex. The degree of success achieved by these means may be assessed by the quality of outsideness or otherness characteristic of the work produced. Crowley, Spare, Dali, Tanguy, and others used the formula successfully, but many artists, although inducing the required state of hypersensitivity, fail to bring through and mold in the flesh of their respective media the influences that flow through them. When this failure is constant, as unfortunately occurs in so many cases, a short-circuiting results, and the psychophysical machinery fuses and burns itself out. The magical ability of the artist depends very largely upon the acuity of his sensitivity. This is something more than the sensitivity of a psychic or spiritist mediumship, which is a form of passive creativity. Rather is it the active hyperesthesia of the occultist in an inspired and oracular phrase exemplified in the present case by Sor Andahadna. This artist priestess, whose powerfully magical and artistic work is becoming increasingly sought after in the United States, combined initiated insight with a comprehensive grasp of the present critical world situation. She wishes to conceal her mundane identity. After deciding to appear in this book under the name which she is known in the OTO, she wrote, quote, I had considered suggesting the use of Naatan's name as author, but he wants no part in it, at least in terms of the 20th century. It's not that he is a future chauvinist, but he wishes that the clarity of distinction of aeons be maintained, lest Fredericad's error be repeated, and the work of the Aeon of Horus be thereby slighted. He recommends that each of us working the Mott current be fully prepared to accept responsibility for its manifestation as individuals and guides. Otherwise, those whose consciousness responds to the Mott energy may find it difficult, if not impossible, to gain access to it for themselves. Ipsos will open the necessary portals, but the effects of the initial contact usually act as a means of disorientation. Unquote. This passage raises an interesting and vitally important point. I had written in Cults of the Shadow that Fredericad was premature in announcing the incoming of the Aeon of Mott, which he did in 1948, because there were no signs upon our planet of the dawning of an age of truth and justice. However, Andahadna's work has made it possible to view this matter in a somewhat different light. As I hope I have shown in the present book, there seemed little doubt at that time that Akkad was premature in his optimism, but that the Aeon of Horus will endure for the span of an aeon as normally gauged is now somewhat doubtful. What emerges directly from Andahadna's writing and indirectly from Akkad's is that the work of the Aeon of Horus consists specifically in paving the way for the advent of the 80s, with all the implications of that number, and of the remainder of verse 46, chapter 3, with its augury of man's supreme abasement as he stands now in time literally upon the brink of the 80s. 46 is the number of MV, and the voice of the vulture, and it is interesting to note in this connection the correspondence with Maat of the three stages of the primal fire, Kundalini, in the human organism. The Sakti or sect is the fire force at the earth center, whereas Sekhmet, she is the sun lion in the south. At the lunar center, Yesod, she is Sekhmaut, typified by the vulture, the bird associated with the mummified dead, symbolic of the entranced priestess exploring the Amenta, the subconscious. At the highest center, she becomes Sekhmat, who utters the word of truth from the mouth of hell. Allusion has already been made to a most significant confirmation of the mouth symbolism in connection with the daughter aspect of Ma'yan. We have here, then, three major concepts that demonstrate a connection between death, the mouth, Pe, and the sexual energies of the lunar current, typified by Kof. The formula of love and death is thus resumed beneath the image of the necrophagous scorpion. Ralston Skinner notes that Scorpio borders on Libra, the scales, whose sign is that of Libra, which is that of an ancient pillow on which the back of the head to the ears rested. Also, the badge of Scorpio is death-life in the symbol of capital P with a cross through it. Libra is the astronomical glyph of Maat, and it is here represented upside down as if to emphasize the essentially Venusian nature of the formula, for Isis Muth, Maat or Maut, signifies Venus in Libra. Furthermore, the sun and moon are conjoined in Libra, the moon representing the Kof, or Kof, that is the magical image of Ma'ayan. Libra is the sign of the fall, the sunset of the year, and symbolically of the fall of the great equinox, when Huromachis shall rise and the double-wanded one shall assume my throne and place. Al 3:34. Huromachis means son, Heru of the star, which star I have identified with Sirius, Sothis, or Set on, Satan. It is the star of Isis, and the name Huromachis contains the names of the son Heru Horus and the daughter Ma, thus showing the dual nature of the double current and the interrelation of the double aeon of Horus Mat. Horus as Huromachis is also known as Herakti, the lord of the balance, i.e. lord of Mat, the balance of the double horizon astronomically represented by the two equinoxes, as Set is the lord of the double solstice. Huromachis is beyond the present aeon, as Sirius is beyond the sun. As suggested in the Magical Revival quote, it is probable that in this concept Crowley saw an adumbration of the hidden God, who will not, therefore, eventually assume my throne and place, as is written in the Book of the Law, but who is already throned, has been, and will be forever, unquote. And what are we to make of the later revelations contained in the Kabbalahs of Beskul? There are thrones underground. This is surely without meaning unless applied to the tunnels of Set, and their guardian kings whose thrones are beneath the paths and lie on the night side of Eden. The name Huromachis contains the daughter star within it, and in his form of Herakati, or Lord of the Two Horizons, he is the vehicle of the double current of the Horus Mat. Mat, goddess of the two truths, is the way of the balance, the funambulatory pathway that induces a peculiar and creative vertigo in those that tread the precarious webs slung across the gulfs of space. She is also the way of the plume, the feather, quill, pen, or penis that etches the mysteries of Mu on the vellum of the void. She is also the vulture, the necrophagious haunter of the burning ground and of the abominable plateau of Leng. Leng has the value of 88, the number of cobs in the star in the Ku, or magical power. Worship of the Ku releases a down shower of the light of Aiwas. The Ku terminates the name Hormaku, and is the magical power of the son Hor and daughter Ma combined. Their union is Mat, whose word is truth. 88 is also the number of CHSK,
the darkness through which the light of truth shines, and of NCHL, seething, burning. It also implies the secret glory, for 88 is the number of IMAHBI, let them that love me, for them that love me. Taking the terminal of Lang, i.e. NG, as the primordial sound itself, Ain or Ayin 70, and adding to it LE, produces 105, the number of TZIH, desert land. This desert land, as the plateau of Lang, is the earth of Netzach, ruled by Venus, who irrigates it with MIMH, her waters. Also 105. But the key meaning of 105 in this context is HPK, which means to subvert, to change, and this change is the death that furnishes the feast of the abomination. Finally, 105 is the sum of the numbers from 1 to 14, denoting the sexual aspect of the Shakti power, and the number of the door leading to the inner spaces. The number of Lang as 88 includes also the symbolism of the tower and the chalice. The number of the tower is Pe, 80, of the chalice, Cheth, or 8. The function of Mars in the tower symbolism here refers not to warfare, but to the shedding of the blood of the mouth. Pe means a mouth of the virgin priestess, and to the implied sexual onslaught. The priestess is virgin because unawakened. Hence the symbolism of the dead and the apparent contradiction of a living mortuary feast. The number of Hurumakis as 570 is that of SHOR, the door to the inner spaces and dimensions of Mat as the daughter, i.e. as the virgin or entranced priestess. Again, as 582, Hurumakis is identical with the Orisha-Orisor complex, thus demonstrating the infinitely subtle interrelation of these magical cross-currents. Andahadna, the virgin priestess of Mat, has formulated her will, which is that Tao may flow, that day side and dark side may unite within consciousness to produce synthesis, the children, the daughter state of Mat. She initiated this current by publishing the grimoire of Matian rites up to and including the sphere of Tifereth. These rites include the Mat banishment ritual, the invocation of Mat with feather and flame, a rite for contacting the forgotten ones, and the full mass of Mat, which pertains to Netzach in the Venusian power zone. The latter is balanced in the sphere of Hod, or mercurial power zone, by the schema for the dance of the masks in relation to the double tree of verse and reverse. The double tree forms the 11-fold cross, and its reflection twice 11 in the double-wanded one, 11. One number of the word mask is 121, or 11 squared. It is the number of nocturnal vision and implies the functioning of the priestess on the night side of the tree. It is also the number of HGLGLIM, or whirling motions, suggesting the dance as a creative vortex funneling the kalas of the Suvasini. It may also be significant that 121, 11 times 11, is the number of Satan. Taking the final letter of mask as the value of Kof, the number 201 is obtained. And this is the number of Ar, the Chaldean word for light. The light which is concealed as a child in the womb of its mother, thus the perfect talisman of Mat. The child, daughter, is the manifestation of the mother, Mat. Toward the end of his life, while performing the twice-yearly ritual of obtaining a word for the equinox, Crowley's magic ring touched upon the word manifestation at the end of the first chapter of AL. The exact date is unknown, but it was shortly after my first meeting with him in 1944. And so, as the egg in the Amalantra vision broke and gave birth to Akkad's work, so this oracle of manifestation seems to now point directly to the Ma Ion, which Sorer and Ahadna is now bringing to birth.